Thank you everyone for joining us this week. With December legislative days and a variety of hearings and meetings occurring this week and next, I hope to give some succinct updates today, which will complement the other detailed information that we're providing to the legislature. And I'd like to start with giving an update on our employees at the Wilsonville Contact Center. Last week, I shared that we were seeing an increase in positive COVID-19 cases among our own employees, an increase that mirrors what has been happening across the country and throughout the state. With months of preparation and testing by our IT, human resources, unemployment, insurance, and other employees, hundreds of employees were moved to working remotely since last week. This intense lift is possible because of our dedicated and flexible employees and the work that they've been doing for quite some time to expand our telework capabilities. Fortunately, the disruption to handling our claims is less than we had feared. We are not slowing down, and we will keep facing every challenge that confronts us. Last week, we issued a notice of intent to award a contract for our unemployment insurance modernization project to Fast Enterprises. While this is not a signed contract, it means we can do the detailed negotiations to move our unemployment insurance modernization forward with urgency. We're very excited about what this means for the project. Just last week, we spoke about the need to improve our systems. We want to make the experience for Oregonians seeking benefits much faster, smoother, and friendlier. And on the back end, we want to make sure we can more easily process and pay claims, better communicate with those seeking our services, and implement new programs. We'll continue providing updates as we move forward with this modernization project. In the meantime, we do have lots of information on the modernization section of our agency website, and we encourage people to sign up to receive updates about our UI modernization project. We've been talking about the end of the year and what that means for benefit programs, and want to remind people that federal law is ending the high extended benefits effective December 12th of this year. That extended benefits program provided up to 20 weeks of extensions for people who used up other benefits. We received notice from the U.S. Department of Labor that beginning on December 13th, it can only provide 13 weeks in benefits instead of the 20 that it had been providing. People who have exhausted their extended benefits claims as of December 13th are encouraged to apply for pandemic unemployment assistance, PUA, as soon as possible. Some of those people may be able to get PUA for the few weeks before that program also expires. And that's because the Federal CARES Act programs, including PUA, also expire this month. That also includes the Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation, or PEUC program. Those expire on December 26th. We will, however, be paying those retroactively. And that means if somebody seeks benefits for a week up through December 26th, if they're eligible for those benefits, we will pay them, even if they don't claim the week until after December 26th. Next week, we'll be emailing and calling people who are receiving PEUC or PUA benefits to remind them that these programs expire on December 26th. Our chatbot, Jessie, is now available on our Spanish unemployment website. The chatbot is an online chat function that we hope helps people more quickly find answers to general questions about benefits. To use the chatbot, people can go to unemployment.oregon.gov/ES, click on the pop-up box and type in their question. The chatbot is not a live person and it can't give specific information about particular claims, but it does make it easier to find and use information about benefits. We also know that people want to know what is going on with people attempting to commit fraud regarding the many benefit programs that we're administering. We've shared before that fraud attempts do take place. Unfortunately, criminals watch the news and look at any information that's provided and use that to guide their future attempts to defraud the systems, and we will not be sharing information that helps criminals steal benefits from the trust fund. We also know that people are interested in the employer unemployment taxes. We're sharing information regularly with policymakers and with the public. It's a complex statutory formula that comes up with the unemployment insurance tax rates. That complex formula has worked for decades through multiple recessions, including incredibly large ones, and it has kept Oregon's trust fund solvent and saved employers money while funding the benefits that workers need. We don't want a rush decision to potentially look at modifications that end up costing employers more. We're continuing our webinars, and our next one regarding the unemployment insurance program will focus on the upcoming end of CARES Act and federal benefit programs. It's scheduled for 1 p.m. on Thursday, December 17th. To join the live webinar, you can register online, and you can also view a recording of this webinar and all of our prior ones by visiting unemployment.oregon.gov/webinars. For the paid family and medical leave insurance program, we held the final town hall of 2020 on Tuesday, December 8th. This session focused on self-employed individuals and independent contractors who can elect to participate in the paid family and medical leave insurance program, including looking at contribution and benefit amounts and how to elect coverage. Recordings of all of the town halls are available on our website at oregon.gov/employ/PFMLI, and you can click on Town Halls to get to those recordings. At the start of the recent statewide freeze regarding the ongoing spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, we estimated that about 51,000 jobs in Oregon would be impacted. Looking at the activity that we've seen since then, the volume of increased claims was actually about another 53,000 claims. About 19,000 of those were people filing initial claims, starting a claim for benefits for the first time, and about 34,000 of those were people who had previously been receiving benefits and stopped, but then resumed claiming benefits. I wanted to give an update also on how we are doing with paying out the waiting week to people. So far, we've paid about 385,000 people for the waiting week, totaling about $269 million. When we first started issuing these payments, we estimated that about 170,000 people's claims would need manual work and that it could take until the end of January to get all of those payments out. As of today, that number is down to about 22,000 people whose claims need manual work and they have not yet received the waiting week payment. Many of those are the more complex claims from people who are on extension programs or have other various complications. We're continuing to make good progress with these, and we hope to be able to pay the vast majority of these by the end of December. And even with this increase of claims that we've seen in the past few weeks, the teams of people that we have working on getting those waiting week payments issued, and with moving hundreds of people to working remotely over the past week, it is not slowing down our focus adjudication work. We continue making progress on those efforts and are on track to get through the focus adjudication claims by the end of this year. As a reminder, as of September 30th, we had identified that about 52,000 people had claims that needed to be adjudicated, and we wanted to resolve those as quickly as possible. This week, of the 52,000, there are about 12,600 remaining, and we continue to make progress each and every day. In terms of the overall benefits that we've been providing since the pandemic began, from March 15th through December 5th, we've paid out $6.2 billion in benefits, a decade's worth of benefits over the course of this pandemic. The regular unemployment claims continue to get processed quickly. During that time period, we've received just under 624,000 claims for regular unemployment benefits. During the same time period last year, that was just under 104,000. And of all of those claims that we've received, there's just under 2,200 waiting to be processed. That's actually fewer than last week. We continue to deal with the increased number of claims filing well. The very oldest of those that has not yet had the initial processing is from November 18th. And the large majority of those claims are all being completed within 5 days of them being filed. We're also making progress with the PUA claims. We so far have paid out $391 million to just under 80,000 people. And we've been talking about WorkShare, one of Oregon's boutique benefit programs. We have about 1,700 employers using that program, covering over 66,500 workers. And use of this program during the pandemic has saved Oregon employers $84 million with those benefits being federally funded. And I want to close by pointing out how vital our employees are to the work that we're doing. They're the backbone of this agency, and they work hard to make sure that people are receiving benefits as quickly as possible. It's because of their dedicated work and tireless efforts that we've been able to pay out 10 years worth of benefits in only 9 months. Our employees' safety and well-being is a priority, and I'm very glad that we've been able to help many of them begin teleworking, and we look forward to helping even more do so. I also look forward to providing Oregon legislators with helpful information as I look to see how we can keep our UI Trust Fund healthy and meet the needs of employers and Oregonians in desperate need of financial help during these very troubling times. And on a final note, to those who are worried about the ending of federal relief programs, we share your concerns and we are committed to moving as quickly as we can to implement any benefit programs if Congress approves additional funding for benefits. We remain committed to our priority of getting everybody the benefits they qualify for as quickly as possible. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, David. Now we are opening the lines up to the press to ask questions. I will call on you in the order you RSVP. Reminders, you'll have time for one question and one follow-up question. And if you're joining us by phone, hit *6 to unmute yourself. First up, we have Lindsay Nadrich with Coin.
David, I was wondering, do you know what the oldest claim waiting and adjudication is? I talked to a gentleman today who said he filed in April and has been waiting 8 months. Is that, I know it takes a long time, but are you prioritizing these by dates? And do you know, I guess, what the oldest claim is that's waiting? Is there a way to know that?
So I don't have the date of the oldest one. If it is from April, that sounds like an outlier and one that we should be focusing on. We do have a lot of people that have filed claims that have backdated, so they may be seeking benefits back to April or sometimes even earlier, but their claim wasn't filed until much later. But we absolutely are prioritizing the older claims first. We're continuing to do what we've been talking about, of trying to help those who have been waiting the longest, although there have been other priorities, such as people impacted by the wildfires or those particularly dire situations that we hear about. But we're on track. I mentioned the focus adjudication. That was about 52,000 people. That was everybody whose claim needed adjudication as of September 30th. And we're on track to complete all of those by the end of this month. And we have been working through those based on the older ones as much as we can.
Sorry, I have a two-part question there. So for somebody like who is still waiting, they're saying, you know, they haven't even got their initial benefits. Now they're worried about, you know, they've passed their, if somebody from April has passed their weeks that they can get benefits, but they can't apply for extended benefits because they haven't even gotten their initial benefits. If that makes sense, what does somebody do in that situation? Can they apply for extended benefits? And then with the claims that you said we're down to the 12,600, are those all the other claims? Does that mean people are receiving benefits, or does that just mean that the claim has been processed and assigned to adjudicator? What's the status of those being resolved? Does that mean out of those 52,000, 12,600 are still waiting for benefits and the other people are getting payments? Or what do you mean when it's been, you know, resolved?
Sure. So I'll address that second question. Unfortunately, when we do the adjudication, not everybody is eligible for benefits. And at its core, that's what the adjudication requires us to do, is to look at the claim and see whether they meet the legal eligibility requirements to receive benefits. And I'll emphasize again, when we're talking about the people whose claims need adjudication, some of those people have been receiving all of their benefits in the meantime, but there's still an issue that we have to look at. Some of those people may have received most of their benefits, but there's 1 week or a couple of weeks that we're required to look at. And those are the only payments that are really waiting to determine whether they are eligible for them. So for all of those 52,000 that we've already resolved, it means that we completed the adjudication process and we have either determined that they are eligible for benefits, and if they hadn't already received them, those benefits have been released, or we determined that they were not eligible for benefits. We've told them that they get a decision that says why, and it includes the information on how they can challenge that if they believe we made an incorrect decision.
Thanks.
Thanks, Lindsay. Next is Peter Wong with Pamplin Media.
Hi, and thanks. Two questions about modernization. Last week, you had said that the state was going through its, I don't know what kind of process, but given that an objection was filed, you had to redo some things. I assume with today's comment that that process has been completed and there's no appeal on that one.
So I'll kind of go over what that process was. We went through a procurement process. We had issued a notice of intent to award the contract previously, and another vendor filed a protest challenging that. As a result, we kind of went back to do some additional review, and that was the time period where we were saying that we were kind of back into that active procurement process of selecting who we intended to contract with. We did complete that process, and the culmination of that was us issuing that notice of intent to award last Thursday. Whenever that's done, state law does provide a time period for other vendors to file a protest, and that time period hasn't passed yet.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. The other question also has to do with modernization, which I believe you told the Senate Labor and Business Committee yesterday you would like, if possible, to incorporate the still developing paid family medical leave program into the new system. Will that take additional money? Is that covered in the governor's budget request? I assume that was not contemplated when you, or was it considered when you contemplated this whole modernization? Well, obviously not from the very beginning, because paid family medical leave was authorized by the legislature in 2019, so it doesn't go all the way back the decade. But
right, so we were already fairly far into a lot of detailed planning and work on the modernization project before the paid family medical leave insurance program came into existence through legislation last year. So certainly the planning that we've been doing for modernization has been focused on making sure that we modernize successfully to support the unemployment insurance programs, and in later stages, our programs that help workers and businesses kind of find each other to match people seeking work to employers that are seeking people to perform work. We did leave open the possibility with our modernization procurement process. We knew that we needed more information that we needed to gather both through that procurement process and through a lot of work looking at the paid family and medical leave insurance program and looking what that requires to see whether it made sense to combine those into a single system or program or not. So that final decision has not yet been made. We've gathered a lot of good information, and as I've shared with the legislature, there are some really appealing aspects to that, but we want to make sure that we're looking at what that would do to the time needed to stand the programs up. Importantly, to how that looks to the public as we're serving them. In this case, if we're talking about taxes, it's focused on the employers a lot and what their experience is, filing reports, giving us information that we need to run the programs. In terms of the budget aspect, we submitted budget requests, and the governor's recommended budget supports the money that we think is needed to build those systems, not necessarily assuming that they would be combined. And that's one of the things that we're exploring before we make that final decision, is whether it would be the same cost or whether it potentially actually has some cost savings by incorporating both programs into a single system.
okay, thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Next is Kate Davidson with OPB.
Hi. I know that everything is very much up in the air in Congress right now with the stimulus negotiations, but I wanted to get a sense of how big a gap you would anticipate if Congress worked sort of right up to the wire on the 18th and then passed some kind of extension of the federal programs. How long would it take to implement those in Oregon?
That's a great question, and it's really hard to say because there still are so many variables about what the programs could be. Unfortunately, we're at a point where even if they do pass the easiest to implement solutions, it's been so long that having a law passed on December 18th making sure that we know what the federal guidance is going to be on at least some key aspects, and then being able to update our computer systems, train our employees, test the computer system to make sure that it's not doing anything unintended. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any realistic chance that that can be done without some gap in payments. We've been getting as much work done as we can so we can absolutely minimize that gap. And we've been sharing the things that will, with Congress, that will help make it easiest for us to get it implemented more quickly. Fortunately, some of the proposals that we've seen recently do not have some of the most complex aspects. So I think earlier, Oregon and a number of other states had said that some of the proposals being talked about could take months to program. We're not seeing those most complicated versions being talked about now, but it certainly would take several weeks at a minimum if it's the most straightforward. And we really won't have anything more specific until we can see what the law actually is that may come to be passed.
I also wanted to ask, I believe that yesterday Governor Inslee in Washington said that Washington was prepared on its own to sort of extend by a month their PUA program on the state's own dime if Congress doesn't act. Is there any consideration of a state extension going into effect in Oregon?
So we don't have the authority to do that on our own as the employment department. We've had discussions with the U.S. Department of Labor. We're not allowed to use the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund to do that. And we're not allowed to use the administrative money that we get from the federal government to run our benefit programs to do that. So it would still require legislation, whether at the federal or state level, for us to be able to pay those benefits.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Kate. Next is Bill Poehler with the Statesman Journal.
Yeah, hey, David. So I'm hearing from some people who have been laid off for the second time now, and they were one of the people was wondering about the extensions, like with the extended benefits, and she ended up working for about 3 months or 4 months in her job, and now she's laid off again. So as far as what are the programs that are available for people like that to keep getting benefits? I don't think the extended benefits applies to her, but I'm kind of curious if the other ones still work for her.
So it might, and it does get very fact specific, which is part of the reason that it can be difficult to give one answer where everybody knows exactly how it will work for them. In general, when people are eligible for regular unemployment insurance, they can get 26 weeks worth of benefits in Oregon. So if she received some of those weeks and then went back to work and then becomes unemployed again, whichever of those 26 weeks she hadn't yet used are still available, as long as it's within a 1 year period. If she does end up exhausting all of those 26 weeks, right now, there are multiple programs. So I mentioned the PEUC, one of the extension programs. She might be eligible for that. That would provide additional benefits, but again, that does expire after December 26th. If either she's not eligible for PEUC, or if she were to use up all of those benefits, she might qualify for extended benefits. And although the number of weeks available is dropping, until our unemployment rate drops below 6.5%, at least some extended benefits remain available for many people. And then depending on circumstances, some of those people might be able to get pandemic unemployment assistance. Again, unfortunately, that's one of those federal programs that is expiring at the end of this month.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So if they went back, if somebody like her went back to work, that doesn't reset anything as far as the 26-week part?
If she were it depends on the timing, but if she were unemployed at the start of this pandemic, for example, and first started receiving benefits then and went back to work for a few months and is unemployed again, it doesn't reset the clock on those 26 weeks. It just kind of paused. So while she wasn't collecting any benefits, it didn't count towards those 26 weeks. So she could kind of resume getting benefits If she had received 10 weeks of benefits before, and she again becomes unemployed and meets the requirements, then she could start claiming, and she would get her 11th week of benefits at that point, and could continue receiving those until she used all of them up.
Okay, great. Thank you, David.
Mhm.
Thanks, Bill. Next is Michael Cohn with the Bend Bulletin. Is Michael on the line? I know he said he may have to step away. Michael Cohn with the Bend Bulletin. And if you're joining us by phone, you're going to hit *6 to unmute yourself. You may have to do that a couple of times.
I'll pass it this time, thank you.
Okay, we will come back to Michael. Next is Mike Rogoway with the Oregonian.
Hi, David. I've heard from small businesses that are facing the UI tax increase that one of their big concerns is around communication. So that, you know, given that the size of the increase that some of them are facing, they wish that they had some notice about this. That folks must have known that this was coming for a subset of the economy. Was there any thought to giving people an early heads up, or identifying industries that would be particularly hard hit?
So the process of coming up with each employer's tax rate is a very time-intensive one that takes quite a bit of time, and really from the time the data first becomes available for us to do that computation and determine what the tax rates are, we're finishing up generally just in time for us to then go ahead and notify employers of what their individual tax rates will be. So giving that advance notice is really difficult. Although some industries have been hit harder than others and some employers have been hit harder than others, it's not uniform even within industries. So some employers are seeing their tax rates go up. There are still, it's about 11% of Oregon tax-paying employers saw their taxes go down in terms of the tax rate from 2020 to what they will be in 2021. And until we look at each individual employer's experience and apply the statutory formulas, we can't really tell people whether they're going to be in the category whose taxes will go up, go down, stay the same, or what the degree of that change might be.
I hear you on that, but you know, when I look at the broad categories, what happened to gyms, for example, which lost 2/3 of their employees by early summer, or restaurants, which I think were down by half at one time. It was obvious that within those sectors there would be an enormous hit. Did folks talk to, for example, the Restaurant and Lodging Association and say, hey, be sure to let your members know you're going to be facing this next year?
So I can tell you that I didn't have those discussions. We were having discussions with various business groups, including restaurant and lodging associations and a number of others. And most of those discussions early on were around, and even fairly far into the pandemic, were not around those issues. It was around helping their workers, getting benefits, getting PUA benefits to people, and making sure that the program was getting benefits out as quickly as we could. We've been open to discussions. We've had a number of discussions with various business groups about how the statutes calculate tax rates. And we've talked to them about what kind of the variables are. This is something that happens annually every November when employers get their notice. It kind of tells them not just what their tax rate is, but how we compute it, and talks about the fact that it is partially based, as federal law requires, on their experience rating, which is how many benefits are paid out to their current or former employees.
Thank you, David.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, next is Tom Cusack with Oregon Housing Blog.
Hi, David. I've got a couple questions related to the number of people who are going to lose their benefits. I think the number that I've heard is 70,000. My recollection is about 3,500 of those are in the extended benefit program. Will that number of people who lose their extended benefits continue to increase as we go into the new year, or will that stay constant?
So there's always, unfortunately, some people that are exhausting benefit programs. So there will be more people as we go into 2021 that use up all of their extended benefits. And if there is no other legislation, are likely not to be able to get benefits under any of the programs that we have the authority to pay out. The pace of that will depend, and it depends also on our unemployment rate. I mentioned that the extended benefits program is one that federal law requires to kind of turn on and turn off based on the unemployment rate. So if our unemployment rate drops below 6.5%, the 3-month average unemployment rate, then unfortunately the extended benefits program at that point goes away completely. If it stays at or above the 6.5% mark, then those benefits will remain available, but we will see some people that continue to exhaust all of the 13 weeks of benefits that are available at that point.
Okay, and my follow-up question is, and I wish I'd been able to figure this out myself, but of the total population of people who are currently receiving benefits, what share is that 70,000? Is that 20%, 40%, 30%? I have no idea what percentage of the total universe that is.
That is a great question, and I'm not going to attempt to do the math in my head, so I don't have that answer available offhand. It's a significant number. It's everybody on pandemic unemployment assistance to start.
Right.
And a lot of people that are on PEUC won't be able to get any other benefits. So I don't have that percentage offhand, I'm sorry.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Next is Dick Hughes with the Hughesisms.
Thank you very much, David. First of all, I want to say thank you for you and your staff for answering the same questions week after week, which is a prelude to explaining that, yes, again, I'm asking something you've talked about before, but following up on Peter Wong's question about modernization. Can you refresh me on how much of the modernization will be a brand new system, separate from the state mainframe computers? And can you, when you talk about that you want it to be smoother, et cetera, can you be more specific in any way about what the user experience would be for someone applying for benefits? Like, is there a goal of getting the benefits out in half the time it normally does, or things like that?
Sure. So in terms, and this is one of those questions where there's a lot of nuances, but in terms of what it will replace, it will not replace every current computer system that we use to run the unemployment program. And part of that is we have some pieces of programs that are required by federal law for us to use, and we have to connect to a lot of other systems and a lot of other agencies and federal government programs. So I think I've shared the analogy before that it's kind of a spider web. So we're not going to get rid of the entire spider web and just have one new program stood up, but it will replace a large number, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think actually the information on our public website for modernization has some information about the number of systems that will be completely replaced. And it's a lot, because we have a lot of different mainframe and other systems that are all kind of layered together to try to provide services. In terms of what it will look like to the public, that's something that we spent a lot of time thinking about up front. And frankly, all of the pain that people have experienced during the pandemic are the types of things that we have from the beginning been planning to really address. So we want it to be quicker. We want it to be easier for people to understand. So some specifics are that we do want it to be quicker for us to get payment started. A lot of the things that we've talked about have been some of the communications are the timing of them. People have to wait to get something in the mail, or they get an email, or they're getting repeated communications and they try to get back to us. And that has been one of the big challenges for us and for everyone trying to get benefits during the pandemic. That communication process we envision being very different to where we're able to securely get information quickly to people about their specific claim, and where the system would be gathering information from people as they file their claim kind of dynamically. Based on the information they give us, it would ask some of the follow-up questions so that a lot of the directing of claims to the right people and deciding in a much more advanced way whether somebody does have to look at it or if it can just go ahead and be paid, or if it will need adjudication. That will be much more streamlined. So it will be both quicker for us to process the claims, and it will be a much better experience because people will be getting asked for information up front much more often, rather than having to wait for us to contact them to say, here's some additional information that we need.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dick. Next is Kevin McNamara with KTVL.
I don't have a question. I was just sitting in.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. And last today we have Keaton Thomas with K2.
Good. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it. First question is, a while ago we talked a little bit about a certain number of people who had been paid and then been asked to pay back. I think that number was something around 1,500. I wanted to ask you another follow-up, which is, do you know about how many people have been overpaid who are on the PUA program? Specifically, I don't know if you would know that specifically, or even is it a significant portion or not significant portion?
I really don't have that information in front of me in terms of how many people have been overpaid. Unfortunately, there are overpayments that happen in every program, and part of that is due to just the complexity of the different programs, and certainly the agency has made errors on occasion that cause the overpayments. We also have situations where people have answered questions incorrectly, whether they're doing that intentionally or in some cases not, and that meant that they got benefits that we later determined they don't meet the legal eligibility requirements for. So I do know that there absolutely are some overpayments in every program, but I don't know offhand how prevalent they are within the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Program.
Makes sense. The other question that I have for you is, I talked to Bella today who was receiving benefits, and then he got a job for about a week or two, so he was no longer on unemployment, and then needed to restart his claim. And since restarting that claim, he says he has not received any payments and still waiting for something to happen with the employment department. So I guess I'm curious, how long does it normally take to begin getting paid again when you restart a claim?
And I'll give the answer that unfortunately I give too often, which is it depends. For a lot of people, there's no break. Basically, they would report and they would start getting benefits the next week. For instance, if somebody had stopped claiming benefits and the information that we get when they restart their claim shows that there's no issues that we have to look at about whether they're eligible for benefits, the majority of those go through very quickly, and typically within a week, those benefits are resuming. If somebody had gone back to work and became unemployed again, sometimes because of the temporary rules that we put in place early in the pandemic, for some of those, we're able to very quickly look at those and determine that we don't have to do adjudication. And again, we can go ahead and resume making payments. Sometimes there are other complicating factors. Maybe they've had some work out of state where we have to get information from the other state. Maybe they became unemployed for a reason that does require us to do adjudication. And then as we've been sharing, that does take more time fortunately, the amount of additional time is shrinking as we're getting through that work faster than we ever have, but that certainly would cause some additional delay before the payments could resume.
And then just, I think maybe, sorry to ask you a third question. You mentioned there's like something 12,600 claims in adjudication left. Does that encompass all of the claims in adjudication right now, or just those from the 52,000? I guess, are there claims being added?
Sure, that's a good question. And to be very clear, that is from the 52,000. There are still other claims that are being added. I will point out, though, that we're moving through all of these much quicker than we ever have before. So we're getting through thousands of these each day. And that is much different than was the case even just a couple of months ago. And we have been able to streamline some of the processes, kind of like we did with the upfront processing of claims, where we're able to find some issues that can be handled much more quickly. So those are being resolved, a small number of people getting through a fairly large number of those. So I've been talking about that focus adjudication because that was the goal that we set, was to have all of those done by the end of the year. We remain on track to do that, although that has been certainly an aggressive goal for all the work that has to be done. We anticipate that we'll continue to get more and more prompt at issuing those adjudication decisions, and that we'll be moving through them. Our goal is to get to that that federal kind of benchmark of resolving them within 21 days absolutely as quickly as we can. And we're on a good path to continue towards that as we finish up the focus adjudication claims.